Okay, just make sure I'm not muted. Perfect. So thanks, Marcia, for the introduction. I am happy to be speaking today on ways to cope with loneliness and social isolation. I feel it's an especially important topic to discuss as we enter the cold winter months that are ahead of us, where we see rates of isolation increase. And after the COVID-19 pandemic, we certainly saw a dramatic increase in individuals struggling with social isolation and feelings of loneliness then. So it is an especially important topic. So to begin, I just wanted to show a couple slides, just a brief overview of our behavioral health practice here with Capital Health. You see the list of providers that we have with our practice currently. We have 4 full-time psychiatrists. We have 1 part-time psychiatrist. In addition to that, we have therapists, social workers, and case managers. All provide psychotherapy and counseling, so talk therapy, and our psychiatrists provide psychiatric medication management. So we have a handful of psychotherapy and process groups and support groups as well. And we do everything that we can to assist all patients that are referred to our practice by their doctors. So just our practice location, the things that I discussed that we offer. So let's get started. So for today's learning objectives, I will discuss the following topics. I will go into detail about understanding loneliness and social isolation, the effects on our well-being, our mental and physical health, risk factors that can lead to loneliness and isolation, and lastly, ways to cope and overcome it. I am happy to answer all questions. I know Marcia mentioned that there is a chat where you can ask questions, and I'm happy to answer those questions at the end. But of course, if you would like me to restate something or speak louder, just explain something, feel free to unmute to ask me, and I'd be happy to explain something again. But all questions, I will wait to answer those at the end of the presentation. So as a brief overview, I'm going to go into detail about both just social isolation and loneliness, and just kind of differentiate between the two. So social connection describes the way that we connect with others socially. Every person needs social connections in order to survive and thrive. As human beings, connection is essential to our survival as a species. But at different points in our lives, and especially as we age, we may find ourselves spending more time alone. Loneliness, on the other hand, is the distressing feeling of being alone or separated or disconnected from other people. Loneliness and social isolation are different, but the two are related. So again, loneliness is more of that distressing feeling that you experience, where social isolation is the lack of social contacts and having few people to interact with regularly. You can live alone and not feel lonely or socially isolated, or you can feel lonely while being with other people. So, the two are related, but they are still separate concepts. So for understanding loneliness spans all age groups. You may be a college student who feels lost and ignored, even among a sea of other students on campus. You can be in middle adulthood, noticing that your formerly tight-knit group of friends have drifted apart at different places in their lives. Or as an older adult, you may feel that visits with family members or your contact with friends become less and less frequent, or you may have lost some friends or family members. Whatever the case, loneliness is a potential problem, no matter what your age group, where you are, and where you live. Some experts point out that certain countries seem to be facing a loneliness epidemic. In England, one study found that around 45% of adults felt lonely to some degree. Meanwhile, a study done here in the States found that 61% of adults felt lonely or feel lonely on a regular basis. Rates of loneliness do seem to be rising in our country and other countries, especially as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Lockdowns and social distancing seem to exacerbate the problem, but they aren't the only causes. So if you are feeling lonely now, know that it's nothing to be ashamed of and that many of us are in the same boat. It's something that you can overcome. You can definitely cope with the right strategies, which I will discuss in a bit. So social isolation describes the absence of social contacts and can lead to loneliness. It is a state of being cut off from normal social networks, which can be a trigger, which can be triggered by factors such as loss of mobility, unemployment, or health issues, just to name a few. Isolation can involve staying home for lengthy periods of time, having no access to services or community involvement, and little to no communication with friends or family members or acquaintances even. Some people may be able to go out and meet people, but are inhibited from doing so by the factors I just explained or other factors, mental health issues, social adversity, becoming a carer for a loved one, bereavement. There are many factors that can contribute to this, but any of these factors can be barriers to forming and maintaining social networks and can lead to loneliness and social isolation. So the number of older adults age 60 and older is growing, and many are socially isolated and regularly report feeling lonely. As I mentioned, the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020 brought even more challenges due to health considerations and the need to practice social distancing. Excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water. And the need to practice social distancing. Older adults are at a higher risk for social isolation and loneliness due to changes in health and social connections that come with growing older. Hearing, vision, memory loss, disabilities, trouble getting around, or the loss of family members or friends. Older adults who are socially isolated are more likely, researchers have found, to be admitted to the emergency room or to an assisted living facility or nursing care, and are associated with higher risks for health issues, such as high blood pressure, heart disease, a weakened immune system, mental health conditions, cognitive decline, and more. Researchers have found that people who are socially isolated may get little to no exercise, may drink alcohol, or use recreational drugs in order to cope, get little sleep, which just further the risk of serious health conditions. So I mentioned earlier that people in relationships and connecting with others can still feel lonely, meaning you can be in a romantic or platonic relationship and still feel the effects of loneliness. A sense of loneliness can take place when a couple has lost their emotional connection, Gary Brown, he's a licensed family and marriage therapist. He said, even in the very best of relationships, there are going to be those times when one or both partners may have drifted apart and feel somewhat distant and estranged from one another. If there are additional factors impacting a relationship, such as distance, military involvement or deployment, chronic health conditions requiring caregiving, etc., that can lead to feelings of distance and subsequent loneliness in relationships. So I am sure most of you are familiar with visits to your primary care provider. And if you are not connected to a primary care provider, I would suggest doing so because they are trained and very skilled at providing emotional support if that is needed. So loneliness and isolation, these are topics they can discuss and that they do discuss with their patients regularly. As many as 1 in 5 patients discuss feelings of loneliness and isolation with their doctor. And there is a prevalence as great as 20% of patients expressing feelings of loneliness and social isolation among primary care practices across the US. So it's a very big number, and many patients go to their primary care provider first for any type of emotional support. So this topic does tend to come up quite often. So this is important to mention that loneliness and social isolation can negatively affect your mental health as well as your physical health. You might be filled with self-doubt as you wonder why you aren't connecting with others. Perhaps you begin to question your worth even at times. It's easy for these negative thought patterns to spiral into depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions. Loneliness can also activate your nervous system's fight or flight stress response. So during times of isolation, you might notice an increase in muscle tension, just pain symptoms, digestion issues, chest pains, stress and anxiety, particularly in social situations, can lead you to self-isolate, deepening your loneliness and sense of isolation. And then loneliness can also reduce the quality of your sleep, leading to then a cascade of other problems. Maybe you find you toss and turn at night and then suffer from daytime fatigue, irritability, lack of focus because your body simply is not getting the rest that it needs. So if you feel that you are facing the world alone, you might start to adopt more unhealthy habits. For example, substance abuse and feelings of loneliness often go hand in hand for some people in order to cope with that feeling. When you're socially isolated, it's easy to get wrapped up in your own perspective, which can lead to a distorted view of the world, of yourself, of others. Perhaps, self-doubting, self-loathing thoughts go unchallenged, or you begin to see other people as threats. Other effects of loneliness and social isolation can include, but don't always, a shortened lifespan. Social isolation can increase risk of death even to a similar degree as smoking, which research has also found. It can lead to a cognitive decline. Loneliness can affect cognitive functioning, increasing the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease later in life. It can exacerbate mental illness. If you're struggling with mental illness or any mental health conditions, the lack of social support may worsen it. It can cause impaired immune system and higher inflammation in the body. Chronic stress from loneliness can impair and weaken your immune system and lead to inflammation. An increased risk of physical illnesses as well, a combination of high stress inflammation and impaired immunity can increase your risk for cardiovascular disease and autoimmune disorders. Lastly, there can be a risk of suicide as well. Feelings of isolation may lead a person to contemplate or even start thinking about suicide. Social support, on the other hand, is an important factor in reducing the risk of suicide or suicidal ideation, which I do have resources on the last slide if that is needed. Okay. So for the causes of loneliness, a variety of factors, I know I mentioned a lot, but a variety of factors can lead someone to experience loneliness. In many cases, there's no one single cause, but rather a number of factors that can overlap and intensify one another. Some causes of loneliness are internal, so they involve the way you see yourself and the world around you. Other causes are external. They're based on your location, physical limitations, and the actions of others. Not all of the factors that contribute to loneliness are easy to overcome necessarily. A few might even be completely out of your control. These factors don't affect everyone equally either. Some demographics are more likely to run into certain hurdles than others. For example, younger people might struggle more with shyness. LGBTQ plus individuals may experience more social exclusion, and older adults can feel physically isolated. So to touch on some external factors, physical isolation is a big one. If you live in a rural area, you might have a harder time connecting to others simply because there is more physical space between you and your neighbors and the outside world. Relocation, if you've just moved to a new area, it can be difficult to connect with new people and build a social support network. Relocation and moving is a big one. This can be especially true when paired with an internal factor such as shyness. It may be difficult if you feel shy to put yourself out there to meet new people. Bereavement is another one. The loss of a friend, spouse, family member can lead to loneliness and a deep sense of isolation. Divorce is another factor. Feelings of loneliness are common as people go through a divorce. Even if you are the one who initially brought up the idea of separating, you may feel lonely as you let go of your spouse. And as you can change your life and have to adjust to that. Mobility problems, a physical disability such as a broken leg, arthritis, or spinal injury, there's many more, can make it harder to meet face-to-face with loved ones. An over-reliance on social media. So although social media provides a convenient way to communicate with others, too much time on social media can increase feelings of loneliness. Seeing pictures of loved ones enjoying social outings can make you feel left out or make you more aware of your own physical isolation. So be aware that though we can feel we are in the world when we are on social media and connecting with others, it can still very much in a big way make us feel more lonely and alone. Social exclusion. So at work or in your social life, you might feel excluded by a group of friends because of a variety of factors. Those factors could be race, gender, sexual orientation, disability. Again, there's more factors. An example could be that coworkers might exclude you from wanting to get together after work. These are external factors that can certainly lead to social isolation and feelings of loneliness. So for internal factors, I know I discussed shyness. So if you are shy, if you feel discomfort or nervous, any type of discomfort might discourage you from approaching other people or attending social events. And this can and does lead to self-isolation, even when you really want to engage with other people, because the discomfort is too uncomfortable that it prevents us from putting ourselves in those situations that make us feel uncomfortable. Introversion, if you're an introvert, you might want to skip social events in order to relax, recharge, avoid feeling overwhelmed. However, if you don't balance that desire for solitude with your need for social interaction, you might then start to experience social isolation and feelings of loneliness. Low self-esteem is another one. People who are lonely or are isolated are more likely to be critical of themselves and anticipate rejection. Low self-esteem might discourage you from reaching out to others. So that definitely impacts our loneliness, feelings of loneliness as well. A lack of communication skills. If you have a hard time initiating or holding a conversation, you might also struggle to make new friends or form connections. So communication skills, I will touch on that a bit more and go into more detail as well in a later slide. Socially withdrawing, certain conditions such as depression, anxiety, hearing loss, and eating disorder, there's more, again, these might lead you to withdraw from social situations. Perhaps you feel a sense of shame about your condition, or maybe it leaves you feeling fatigued, overwhelmed, and unmotivated to reach out to others. Because there are so many different causes, there is no quick fix to loneliness, and what works for someone else might not work for you. However, by putting in time and effort and trying out the following coping tools and different strategies that I'll talk about, you can find ways to stay connected with others. So I just wanted to point this out just to kind of summarize. Try to pay attention to potential factors that may cause or contribute to feelings of loneliness, such as the death or loss of a loved one, divorce, separation, moving, changing jobs or unemployment, working from home. Working from home is a big one. I know many of us are still working from home as a result of the pandemic. Physical health problems, mental health problems, or if you live alone. So just try and pay attention to these factors. You may have one of these factors occurring already or multiple. So just know that, this certainly does contribute to feelings of loneliness. So next, I will be discussing these 4 research-identified strategies to reduce feelings of loneliness and social isolation. The first one I'll talk about is how to improve, ways to improve or enhance social skills, enhance existing social support, increase opportunities for social contact, and address maladaptive thoughts or cognitions. And that one is involved, and there is a lot more to it that I will discuss. So for improving our social skills, you might know someone, somebody might come to mind who is a social butterfly. They show no sign or hesitation or awkwardness when chatting with strangers. It may seem effortless, their social interactions. It may seem like it comes naturally to them, but you can build on your own social skills as well. By doing so, you'll feel more confident and increase the chances of making new connections. So some suggestions: make observations. Don't put pressure on yourself to say something profound or funny or witty. Just take in your surroundings and look for small conversation starters. Try to make positive comments rather than complain. Look for reasons to compliment another person. A compliment can start things off on a positive note and give you a chance to ask the following questions. Asking open-ended questions moves a conversation forward, so remember that. These types of questions, open-ended questions, encourage the other person to elaborate and give more of an answer than yes or no. So that gets conversations started. So when thinking of questions, turn to the 5 W's and 1 H, which is who, where, when, what, why, and how. Practice active listening. Focus on other people, the other person's words and their nonverbal cues. Try to understand their message as well as their emotions. If you're not sure you understand what they're saying, ask for clarification. Avoid interrupting or forcibly redirecting the conversation to a topic that you're interested in. So just some suggestions for ways to improve conversations with others, communication, and thus social skills. So for this next slide, which this one is and can be pretty involved. So in our culture, people are more likely to seek social support from friends, family, and colleagues during stressful events to receive assistance, support, assurance. So it's more likely that people will reach out to their supports during times of stress. Explicit social support means actively seeking advice, assistance, and emotional support when others, and is associated with a reduction in negative psychological consequences linked to stressful events. Although social support is important for enhancing psychological well-being, it is not necessarily the size of a person's social support network, but the quality and frequency of the social support that they receive, that you receive, that is protective against psychological distress. So remember, it's about the quality and not the quantity. And again, this kind of shows what I talked about, that it's not about how large your social network is, but just the quality of the people that are in your network. Okay, so whether you just relocated or simply feel a lack of social support, forming new connections might help you to overcome feelings of loneliness. So I will talk a little bit about some ways to find and forge new connections. Joining a club is great, a club that matches your interests. If you love the outdoors, look for hiking or bird watching groups. Prefer being inside, look for book clubs, video game groups, crafting communities. You are more likely to meet people who share your passions. Taking a course at a community college or online classes allow you to learn new skills while also making new friends and forging new connections. And if you do decide to take a class, consider classes that encourage social interaction, such as a foreign language, acting, or dance lessons. Go to local events. You might find like-minded friends at concerts, art exhibits, sporting events. This is a good option if you aren't able to commit to scheduled classes or group meetings. So just an idea. Or senior centers or adult day programs are also a great way to be with others and connect with others. Okay, so this last one talks about our cognitions and our negative thought patterns that can affect our feelings of loneliness. So how you feel about yourself can make a big difference in how you communicate and relate to others. So if you believe negative things about yourself, that you're boring, weird, burdensome, you might feel less inclined to reach out to others. Shyness and social anxiety can lead to a sense of isolation that only reinforces these insecurities. Here are a few points to keep in mind. Other people feel nervous and awkward in social situations. I promise you that. Even if someone seems confident and extroverted, there's a good chance that they have their own self-doubts or insecurities that they are struggling with. Remember that some people are simply better at hiding their insecurities or not outwardly displaying it. So it may seem that they are, comfortable or just completely extroverted when that may not be the case internally. Also realize that people are far more tolerant than you think. You might spend a lot of time dwelling on your own mistakes, but know that other people are not judging you. Your inner monologue doesn't always reflect reality. Maybe you label yourself with qualities that are not true. So take time to challenge those assumptions that you have about yourself and to counter them with positive self-talk. So in this slide, I wanted to show an example of negative self-talk. So the first example, my friends think I'm boring because I have low energy. Challenge that with a neutral or a positive thought or self-talk. So an example is, I offer a calm, grounded presence. So just remember that with every negative thought about yourself, there is a neutral or positive thought that you can replace it with. Okay. Okay, so to go back to that one a little bit more, I wanted to touch a little bit more on low self-esteem because low self-esteem may discourage you from reaching out to others. So just remember that if self-esteem is something that you are struggling with and you feel that others can see this, they can, see that this is happening, that you feel this way about yourself, that they are judging you, know that they are not, that they are struggling as well. And everybody has their own thing that they are struggling with. So people are far more tolerant. So just remember and keep that in mind. So taking care of your mental health is an important piece of this. Mental health conditions and social stigmas can lead people to self-isolate, perpetuating feelings of loneliness. And there really is no one size fits all solution to the cognitive and psychiatric disorders that are out there. However, there are a few steps that can improve your mental health. Being active at any age, physical activity can help you manage conditions like anxiety and depression. Physical activity and exercise can also improve your self-esteem while reducing stress. You don't necessarily have to go to the gym, just do whatever form of exercise is most appealing to you. If you want company, there are plenty of activities, including sports teams, biking, jogging, that offer opportunities for social interactions as well. And getting enough rest is important. Some research indicates that sleep deprivation may contribute to social withdrawal and loneliness. For instance, you might choose to avoid others when you're experiencing the moodiness and fatigue that often comes with sleep deprivation. Make it your goal to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. If that's not practical for you in your life, just, to do the best that you can with that. Practicing mindfulness and acceptance goes a long way. Mindfulness involves focusing your attention on the present while withholding judgment. So this can be accomplished through a variety of exercises and techniques. Mindfulness can be helpful in treating mental health conditions, including depression, social anxiety, and low self-esteem. There is also some evidence that it may alleviate feelings of loneliness as well. So some tips for young adults. Like I said, quality over quantity. Avoid conflating quality of relationships with avoid conflating quantity of relationships with quality of relationships, excuse me. Having hundreds of friends on Instagram and Facebook isn't going to alleviate your feelings of loneliness. You can get better social support from a small group or a small circle of friends. A lot of older people tend to recognize this as well. While older people have a smaller social network, their relationships are often more satisfying and less stressful than those of young adults. Some tips for older adults: don't feel intimidated. You're never too old to learn how to use any of these tools. Whether you experience hearing loss or have limited mobility, technology is out there to help you connect with others. So get to know your options and don't feel ashamed to ask for guidance. As you start to incorporate the strategies listed above, keep this important point in mind. You are not the only person yearning for stronger social connections. Many people are in the same boat, including acquaintances, old friends, and even strangers you pass on the street. The more you take the initiative to reach out, the better your chances of overcoming feelings of loneliness and social isolation. And I wanted to touch on this important slide. If you do need more support, if you feel that your loneliness and social isolation has caused a state of crisis, know that there is support available by calling 988, which is the New Jersey Suicide and Crisis Helpline. I also provided the 1-800 number, which will take you to the same resource as well. Tell your doctor, family member, friend, or anyone if you need more help. Know that loneliness and social isolation are not permanent, and with the right strategies and support, you can develop and rebuild a healthy and satisfying social life. So just my takeaway, I wanted to touch on at the very end that as you start to incorporate these strategies, keep this in mind. Like I said, you are not the only person that's yearning for connecting with other people. The person next to you is probably wanting to connect just as much as you are. So just remember that there are tools, there are resources, and you can do it. You can forge stronger connections with people. You can overcome feelings of loneliness and social isolation. So that concludes my presentation. I wasn't keeping an eye on the chat box, but if anyone has any questions, comments, or thoughts, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you very much, Meredith. That was really great, very helpful. I don't see any questions yet in the chat box, but please feel free to ask away if you want to type your question in. And also, I just want to remind you that I did put it says Survey Monkey. I put the link in for the evaluation. So again, if you can complete that, and I'll remain here for another 10 minutes once we're done, so that you'll have a chance to fill that out. And we also have the recording link up there too. Like I said, the recording will probably be posted in about a week or two if you want to review the presentation. So I don't see any questions, but let's wait just to see if anybody. Here we go. Do you want to read them off, or do you want me to?
I can't see it.
Okay, I'll do. The 100 Hiking Club is an excellent group with activities ranging from short walks, long hikes, and tours, and it's only $15 a year.
Yeah, that's a great resource.
How do you know which kind of therapist you need?
That's a good question. So to find a therapist that is a good fit for you, it helps to, there's different search engines like psychologytoday.com or a simple Google search. You can find pages, a bio or a short page on each therapist, which talks about their background, their specialties, which kind of helps to narrow down with what your experiencing to help match you with a therapist that may be a good fit. But don't be surprised if you have to, you know, try a couple different therapists, go to a couple different sessions with a therapist before one feels like the right fit. I often describe finding the right therapist as a lot like dating. You know, you may have to try a few before you find the right fit.
This was a great presentation. Thank you very much. I
Thank
took a
you.
Tai Chi class through Capital Health last week, and it was a great time.
Oh,
Like I said,
great. Yeah, here Tai Chi is great.
yeah. Where is the recording found for future viewing? I put the link above in the chat box, but I will copy it again right now once I ask the next question. Does insurance cover therapy?
So with our behavioral health practice here with Capital Health, we do accept commercial insurances. So there are, not just with our practice, but there are other therapists that many do take insurances, though there are some that are private pay or do not take insurances. So my advice is when looking for a therapist, as part of your reaching out to them and setting up an appointment, I would ask them if they take insurances before setting up that first appointment with them.
I just put the recording link in. I'm going to put the survey in one more time here. Just do that. Okay. Question, let's see. It is good. Thanks for giving us insightful information. If you're in a good mood, it's easier to talk to strangers and you can get better at it. I find putting a small smile on my face triggers good feelings somehow.
Yeah. And they say that laughter is the best medicine. So smiling like I'm smiling and it's helping my mood. So that goes a long way.
Any other questions or comments or so if not, we will let Meredith go. Again, thank you very much, Meredith, for great presentation. And we do have the recording up there. So you can always look, like I said, it'd probably take about a week or two to get posted.
Okay.
And I will hang around if you can complete the survey. It says Survey Monkey in the link. And I'll hang around for about another 10 minutes just to give you a chance to complete that. Really would appreciate that. So thank you very much, Meredith.
Thank you all for
And
taking the time to be here. I was happy to present. So
yes, and thank you to everyone who came.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.